About a year ago, I released a documentary on transit in Ottawa called Dude, Where's My Bus? Through it, I dove into issues with Ottawa's transit system, OC Transpo, and specifically how it's impacted myself and others across the city. But since then, the transit system has changed a lot. For one, I'm no longer helplessly waiting for a bus. I'm now waiting for a train. The train in question is the Line 2 expansion of Ottawa's LRT, something I was really looking forward to. The suburb I live in, Riverside South, was isolated from the rest of the city by kilometers of farm fields and was often derided by some as being in the middle of nowhere, and the poor bus service of the area reflected this. So it felt like a dream come true when the city announced that it was going to be investing billions of dollars to extend the LRT into the community.
I am proud to announce that the Government of Canada will partner with the provincial government and the City of Ottawa to fully implement Stage 2 of Ottawa's Light Rapid Transit project.
It's going to make commuting easier and everyday life better.
Arguably, one could say it's ignorant to be this optimistic after everything that's happened with Ottawa's transit system up to this point.
Yes or no, sir? We've had enough of the explanations.
But I had a little bit of hope. To understand the significance of the Line 2 extension, you first have to know about the unlikely 30-year struggle it took to get it built.
There's a very strong need to upgrade our whole transportation system.
Back in 1983, Ottawa made major investments in constructing bus-only road networks called the Transitway, which sped up journey times by keeping buses out of congested city streets. The system garnered international recognition as one of the first cities in North America to successfully implement a bus rapid transit system. And as the city grew, additional extensions of the Transitway were added with generous support from the provincial government. That was until one pivotal revolution that occurred in 1995.
It's a mess. Taxpayers get some services from local government, some from the Ontario government, some from both. That's why we're making government smaller, simpler, and less expensive. The savings won't come from reducing services, they'll come from untangling the bureaucracy, making the system work again. It makes sense, because being more efficient is less taxing for all of us.
Mike Harris and the Ontario Progressive Conservatives won a majority government and enacted their Common Sense Revolution platform of reducing taxes and cutting government spending.
He ran on a platform called the Common Sense Revolution, and he wanted to shrink the size of government. And amongst his program, there was the downloading of responsibilities to municipalities, uploading of a portion of the education tax the province assumed. And part of the package was cutting provincial support for capital projects involving public transit.
Famously, Toronto's partially constructed Eglinton subway was cancelled under Premier Harris and had its underground tunnel, which was previously excavated, filled back in. These cuts also derailed Ottawa's ambition of expanding its transitway network to the quickly growing South and West End suburbs.
When I first got elected, we got capital funding, so in other words, the dollars needed to expand the system to, at the time, build transitway or other facilities, to buy buses, and we got subsidy for the operations of the transit system, and that ended. And so part of the complexity of what's happened in Ottawa and other Ontario cities has been we went through many, many years of either no support for capital investment in transit or having to make the case to government around a specific project, and really then being at the mercy of senior levels of government as to whether or not they wanted to fund it.
This forced municipal politicians to get creative in finding a new solution. If not buses to transport people, why not a train? On the surface, it sounds more expensive, but Ottawa already had multiple unused rail lines belonging to Canadian Pacific, which could cheaply be repurposed to fit the needs of the city. An idea advocacy groups like Transport Action Canada quickly got behind.
My name is David Jeans. I'm a board member of Transport Action Canada, which is a national advocacy group that promotes better public transport. Our group, Transport 2000 we were called then, that was the old name, we did a number of presentations to the regional council through their transportation committee to promote the idea of light rail. And one of the candidates for the regional chair, later the mayor, was Bob Shirelli.
Bob Shirelli, who was running for regional chair of Ottawa Carleton, quickly picked up the issue for the upcoming 1997 election.
So that started a group of us on council and also in the community to start lobbying for, well, okay, why don't we try this out? Since we're not getting any money from a promise, but here we have a grade separated piece of infrastructure that should be accessible.
The plan was to convert a 9-kilometer stretch of Canadian Pacific tracks into a light rail system that connected into existing bus services. The line would be a short 5-stop trip between Greenboro and Bayview Station, both large bus transit hubs. The initiative would serve as a pilot project to test the demand for light rail in Ottawa. For this reason, intentional choices were made to make the project cheap and easy to implement. If the pilot proved successful, the city would consider costly expansions into high-travel destinations like the downtown and other city suburbs. Following Bob Shirelli's successful election as regional chair and a year-long feasibility study in 1998, the project was approved.
When he won the election, they had to get the staff re-vectored to be looking at rail instead of bus.
Regional politicians voted to go ahead with a 2-year light rail pilot project. The route will use an existing 8-kilometer section of CP rail track.
I was not involved with Transport Action at the time, but people like, Tim Lane, David Jeans, and some others. So they actually used their extensive, expertise in rail and transit throughout the years, and they showed them how they could create a very cost-effective and simple system that at the time it was filling a really important gap in the transit in Ottawa.
So we were brought in to work with the city's planners, and I actually was appointed by City Council to be a member of the steering committee. We knew the terminology, we knew the technology, and when they brought in consultants, we related very well both to those consultants and to the equipment suppliers. We spoke the same language.
The trains were procured from Canadian manufacturer Bombardier.
We looked at several different possible trains and finally settled on this one from Bombardier. And one of the first things I did was to go over, visit their factory, and actually ride the train in Germany. A similar line, winter conditions, a tunnel, single track with passing places. And I was able to see how it worked in Germany, and I came back convinced that it would work here.
As the pilot project got underway, opposition emerged during the 2000 municipal election. Bob Shirelli's main opponent in the election was former Gloucester Mayor Claudette Kane, who in debates claimed that the train was too expensive and poorly managed. However, public support sided with Shirelli's campaign, and the project continued as planned under his renewed leadership. Initially planned to be opened in summer 2001, procurement issues delayed the launch.
The final design required a sign-off from the provincial government. We actually missed a whole construction season, and that was the reason why it didn't actually start until the middle of October.
But once opened, the train was a clear success.
All aboard for the O-Train. Capital's light rail pilot project officially got on the rails this afternoon, and it's already scoring points with passengers.
The launch delayed from August until September until today. But passengers on the maiden trip say it was worth the wait.
This is beautiful, this is nice and clean, this is perfect.
It's not the national dream, but it certainly has been Bob Shirelli's.
This new O-Train is indeed a train to somewhere.
This new service and these 5 new stations, I am convinced, is the train to the future.
So right off the bat, I was taking the train, and other people really liked it too. In fact, we used to walk over to the O train line and watch it being the construction and watching the testing of the train. So as soon as it became operational, within a day or two of its launch, we would go over there, ride the train out to South Keys, get off, go have a coffee, and then take the train back, and then go back to work again for 1 o'clock.
We had a big ceremony on the platforms at Carleton University. They had a banner across the track, and the first train in, broke through the banner. We had a big red ribbon on the platform, which we had a group of people who cut through it. I was one of them. I had a pair of gold-plated scissors that I used to cut that ribbon.
I remember going to the launch and holding up a big sign that said, like, next stop Canada, which, was not what ended up happening.
After only the first year of operation, the line averaged a total of 6,000 daily trips and a 99% on-time rate compared to the 70% of the buses. All of this for a remarkably low cost of $21 million. The pilot project has shown that rail was a feasible, comfortable, and convenient option in Ottawa. But while celebrations commenced, the train still wasn't void from criticism, and the 15-minute trip was often touted as the train to nowhere.
Over budget and overdue, which critics have called the train to nowhere.
And actually, I did go to Carleton University, and I think unless you consider students to be nobodies and going nowhere, well, that's incorrect.
Really, the reason why it was immediate success was Carleton University was poorly served by OC Transpo. Anyone who went to Carleton University would know that the number 4, the number 7, the number 1 buses that served the campus were awful to use because they got plugged up on traffic along Bromston, along Bank Street. But here was a grade separated, fast, high volume rail line going right through the campus, easy access to that train and get to campus quickly. So it was a success.
We ran for a month or so with free service.
And if you want to try the O train for yourself, you can ride it for free until the end of the year.
But once people started having to pay for it, the ridership remained high. And then they did a user satisfaction survey, and they discovered there was a very high level of satisfaction. People felt that the trains were reliable.
I love the original O train. It's problematic, it's not perfect, but considering the resources they had and what they went in with, it's amazing. I mean, they built it with $20 million. You can't get anything done with $20 million nowadays.
The pilot project's success provided encouragement to expanding the rail network. The only question was where to begin.
What we had hoped was that the city would add a couple of stations. They'd already planned to potentially have a station at Gladstone, a station at Walkley, and a station at South Keys. So all 3 of those stations were included in the environmental assessment, but they were not built. And it was cost reasons. So we hoped that once the system was running, and it was running smoothly, they could just add those stations. But they didn't do that. Instead, they launched a major review as part of the 2003 Transportation Master Plan.
In 2003, Mike Harris's Progressive Conservatives had been replaced by the Ontario Liberals, who were led by Ottawa area MPP Dalton McGuinty, and were willing to help fund the extension. In a 2004 press conference, Premier McGuinty announced that his government would work with the city and federal government to fund the extension, in what he would describe as the largest intergovernmental infrastructure project in the history of our city.
Well, once the train had gone over to Barrhaven, for the funding announcement from the province and the federal government, then things changed very quickly, because now, with all that extra money, the city expanded its viewpoint. Instead of using a slow incremental process of slowly going on to existing railway lines, repurposing them for transit, getting vehicles similar to the Bombardier Talent. But suddenly, with all this funding, they sort of expanded their possibilities. And let's go from the south end, right to downtown.
This new extension would run the train farther south, specifically to the Ottawa Airport, Riverside South, and ending in Barrhaven. From Bayview, the train would run through the downtown core, ending at the University of Ottawa. It was estimated to cost upwards of $725 million to build, and an expected opening date of 2011. To keep costs low, the extension would use streetcar-like vehicles that would run above ground with traffic rather than underground or grade separated, something that would specifically take place in the downtown core. This instantly brought heat upon the project. Downtown businesses who were already upset at the overcrowding of buses didn't like the idea of more transit vehicles filling the roads, assuming it would negatively affect business.
And there was huge debate about that because what would that do to Slater and Albert? What would that do to the business that were there? What would that do to the downtown traffic? And it didn't seem to be a rapid transit.
They didn't like the buses. There were too many of them and they were congested. And they said, you pile light rail on top of that and still keep the buses. We don't want that.
That was a point in time around 2006, 2007, where the transitway going through downtown was reaching critical mass. There was not much room for buses to come through anymore. And so as much as that extension meant that you could take some of the buses heading towards Barrhaven off the transitway, it wasn't nearly enough. And so you would have all of those buses coming down that same street that LRT would be on. And so that LRT spline would be hinging on what was going on the roads downtown.
At this point, the province would provide $600 million and the city would supply $200 million. However, funding from the federal government proved to be difficult to lock down. Paul Martin's Liberal government was sympathetic to the project when it was announced, but before any confirmation on funding the project was made, they lost power in February of 2006.
We've got to put people who play by the rules first, not the ones who break them.
The decision of whether to fund the project was now in the hands of the new federal Conservatives under Stephen Harper, and specifically Ottawa area MP and Cabinet Minister John Baird.
And I appreciate that it only took me, 50 times to be able to ask to be heard, because you don't know the rules. And it is an absolute disgrace. I am here as a member of Parliament, and I have every right to be heard.
Baird, who was appointed president of the Treasury Board, was known for his loud outbursts in the House of Commons and was frequently lampooned for them in Canadian comedy.
Perhaps he could go to the Liberal Party and return all of those cash.
Introducing the John Baird Home Alarm System.
Now he was in control of the funding, and what followed was a highly politicized affair. In July 2006, despite funding not being secured, the City of Ottawa signed a contract with Siemens to be the main construction contractor to lead the expansion. Mayor Bob Chiarelli asserted that Siemens required their first payment by mid-October or the city would face fines, pressuring the federal government to commit. However, Baird claimed that after reviewing the contract, the first payment wasn't due until December, and that he was being misled by the municipal government. As a result, Baird now declared that the federal funding for the project would only be released after the upcoming mayoral election in November of that year.
There will be very, very significant costs to the delay.
Nonetheless, this delay in funding meant that the future of Ottawa's O-Train expansion was now front and center in Ottawa's 2006 mayoral election.
The $200 million is there for the project. The only caveat is the City Council's got to give the green light after the election.
Together, your City Council and I delivered the O-Train, Ottawa's successful light rail pilot. Then we got federal and provincial money, bids from the world's best, and now light rail is ready to roll. Your choice for mayor decides if we move ahead or not, and if we keep the best tax record in Ontario, 6 tax freezes in 9 budgets. I'm not flashy, but I share your values. I'm Bob Chiarelli.
The race was made up of 3 key players, each with a different plan. Bob Chiarelli, as before, committed to continue the project if re-elected as mayor.
This is not a Bob Chiarelli project. This is a consensual project from 2 councils, from a very, very extensive environmental assessment process.
Larry O'Brien, a businessman and newcomer to politics, wanted to completely scrap the project.
Let's take a business-like approach. We need to do something here that makes sense in the City of Ottawa. For once, I think it is never too late to do the right thing, and if given the chance, I would step on the brakes on that side of it as quick as I could say, what is it, Bob Shirelli, ex-mayor.
And in the center was Alex Munter, a former city councillor who wanted to overhaul the project rather than cancel it.
But let's have a fiscally responsible approach to this issue that scales back the existing project, still serves the transit needs of the South, and provides us with savings so that when the studies on East-West come back, that we can actually have funds available to get started.
My view on light rail was to fix it, not mix it. I started to perceive the problems it had. And when you have groups like Friends of the O Train or Transport 2000, or even the downtown businesses that had always been such huge supporters of light rail, so to say, well, there's probably a better way, led me to the conclusion that there's probably a better way to do this.
And I can only repeat that we have a signed contract at the present time, duly authorized by council. They asked me to find the funding. I found the funding. We now have a fully funded project going from downtown to Nepean.
People want mass transit that's fast and convenient. The current configuration of the contract will increase transit times by 15 to 20 minutes for people in the east and the west as a minimum. And we have come up with a new phrase for the people in Barrhaven that we're going to have to go to Barrhaven savings time, because they're going to have to set their clocks ahead 1 full half hour if they want to use the light rail to get downtown in Ottawa. So this system is not faster, nor is it convenient.
And so what Mr. Shirelli is telling us is that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what people think. It doesn't matter what the problems are with the project. It doesn't matter that he uses up all of our financial resources. Just go ahead, plow ahead, and don't listen to what people have to say. And Mr. O'Brien, as has been mentioned, has had numerous different positions, from ripping up the contract to more study. We don't know from Mr. O'Brien what his vision is on transportation. Is it rail? Is it buses? Is it roads? What is his plan? Why does he not make East-West, for example, light rail a priority?
The candidates say that they want to work with Siemens to create a different plan. And that's supposed to be common sense. The reality is that Siemens has a signed contract. They went through a competitive process. And to make any significant changes in the Siemens contract will require a new bidding process. If Mr. O'Brien and Mr. Munter are correct, and you want to do what they want to do, you're delaying north-south and east-west light rail by a minimum of 4.5 years, and you're costing tens of millions of dollars in damages to somebody.
The debate portion is now over.
As November 13th, 2006 came, Bob Shirelli lost, coming in a distant third place behind Alex Munter, with Larry O'Brien becoming the 58th mayor of Ottawa. One of O'Brien's first motions was asking council to cancel the Siemens LRT contract. With a nail-bitingly close 12-11 vote, council agreed to cancel the contract, effectively killing the North-South LRT's expansion plans.
It was a tight 12-11 vote, with the new mayor, Larry O'Brien, casting the deciding vote.
I think they'd taken on too much. They were really pushing to build a double-track electrified railway all the way from downtown out to Barrhaven. And that was really expensive. And when you compared that to what we had thought initially should be done, which was just do a simple extension down to South Keys, maybe to the airport. The airport line was strongly supported by David Collinette, who was the federal transport minister, and leave Riverside South to be bus served, for the moment. There weren't any houses down there yet anyway, right? So, and as far as Barrhaven was concerned, the transit way was a faster way to get downtown than the light rail line was going to be.
So I think looking at the inflation we've seen in transit construction, the fact that we had to do the chance to do the project, so much earlier and didn't take it is really, really disappointing. I mean, my guess is that costed us billions or hundreds of millions of more dollars. And of course, lots of ridership that we could have seen that we never got. So it's disappointing.
There were attempts to rekindle the extension, but ultimately nothing materialized, leading Siemens to take legal action against the city and getting a taxpayer-funded settlement of $37 million.
Nobody should have been surprised that Larry O'Brien canceled the project. He campaigned on canceling the project. And unfortunately, that meant as a municipality, our city ended up spending many millions of dollars in penalties and delaying the start of construction for the light rail project that would ultimately open 12 or 13 years later.
While it seems that Paul Martin's Liberal government was supportive of the O train, no actual funding commitment was arranged before their departure. However, multiple members of the federal Conservative Party seemed to be happy to carry on such a commitment if a change in government was to occur. And MP Pierre Poilievre added that a Conservative government would honor any signed contract. It was alleged by political observers that the incident occurred simply because Baird, a Conservative, didn't like Chiarelli, who served as an Ottawa area MP from 1987 to 1997.
You're a mayor that took chances, and I really enjoyed that.
With O'Brien as mayor, no further extensions to the O train would happen for another decade.
After that, it sort of went downhill. The fact that between 2001 and 2019, there was not a single extension to the system. That's 18 years of nothing. So if you do a pilot project and the pilot project is a success and then nothing happens for 18 years, that isn't a successful pilot, unfortunately. But the next 8 years were a big disappointment.
The head of OC Transpo, Alain Mercier, says he has absolutely no doubt that a huge transit tunnel will be built through downtown Ottawa. Mercier said today he considers the light rail project a slam dunk.
Fast forward to 2013 and a new mayor.
I remember when I no longer was mayor the first time, my nieces used to call me in the past tense your wash-up, so your worship sounds a little better.
I guess it
I
does.
haven't met many politicians who are worship.
And a new phase construction plan for light rail expansion was being introduced.
This is the first glimpse of the light rail transit stations that will be built along the bus tunnel in about 7 years from now.
Stage 1 is well underway. Today, a funding commitment for Stage 2, and that is going to go toward having LRT extend to the east, to the west, and to the south.
Instead of building one mega line going north-south and then east-west across the downtown, the new plan would create separate lines for each direction. Stage 1 would build the east-west portion across the downtown, and then Stage 2 would extend the original O train south towards Riverside South, and further extend the east and west portions towards Orleans and Canada. While Stage 1 had significant challenges with its implementation and leadership, its 2019 opening marked a significant milestone for the city's rail network. It added a critical connection at Bayview to the original O train, which easily allowed north-south commuters to connect downtown. Given that the city now had two separate rail lines, the original O train was officially renamed to the Trillium Line, or Line 2. The two lines ran in conjunction for 8 months until Line 2 was closed in May of 2020 to be extended as part of the Stage 2 of the O train expansion. The $4.6 billion extension would see the train go further south from Greenboro for an additional 6 stops, ending at Limebank Station in Riverside South, with a separate spur line from South Keys to the Ottawa International Airport.
You would get on one of the new Stadler Flirt trains, which is one of the trains that's coming up behind me, and you would take it all the way here to South Keys Station. You would get off the train, wait about 6 minutes, and then from the same platform get on a new train and take it all the way to the airport.
Originally, the extension was supposed to end at Beausville Station in the middle of farm fields in the Greenbelt. However, Riverside South's housing developers, Urbandale and Richcraft, pushed to have it extended an additional 3.4 kilometers in order to reach the edge of the Riverside South community. The extension had an expected completion date of 2022, but after the COVID-19 pandemic and other setbacks, it was pushed to 2023, then 2024.
Earlier this spring, the head of OC Transpo said the north-south Trillium line would open sometime this spring, but they're not saying that anymore, and there are hints it may not be ready for September.
But ultimately launched in January of 2025. So after 5 years of the line being closed, and almost 18 years since the original extension died, Ottawa South has rail. I got a lot of feedback about my previous comments towards Stage 2 of the LRT project. I was told I was being too trusting of the city, that my optimism wasn't shared, and it was a cope. I really thought a lot about this. Was it wrong to be optimistic about light rail? With the LRT extending to more parts of the city, like Canada for example, which is usually very difficult to access via transit, it would make the system overall more accessible and convenient. And additionally, here in Riverside South, have a concurrent mode of transportation. Overall, what I would say to be the better option. Does it live up to those expectations? I took Line 2 on its first day of operation on January 6, 2025. I was dropped off at Limebank Station and took the 11-stop trip to Bayview to connect to Line 1. The ride was really enjoyable. The views from the train after passing through the suburban fields were beautiful, especially around the Rideau River. It was overall a refreshing experience compared to many bus trips I took before. I think a lot of people automatically assume riding public transit is uncomfortable or irritable and get turned off by the idea of taking it. But I'm happy to say that this trip was not the case. In fact, was the total opposite. I was left a little disappointed by the speed of the train, which seems to have been caused by how the line was built.
It's very disappointing seeing the slow speed that the trains go. I mean, if you have your own right of way, part of the benefit should be that you can go very fast, compete with car traffic, make it so less people are driving on the airport parkway. But with the current speeds it goes, it's hard to compete, I assume, with car traffic because it's not fast.
A majority of Line 2 is single-railed, and as a result, bottlenecking occurs, meaning only one train can use certain parts of the line at a time, and the passing train has to wait until the line is clear. Because of this, the trip is a bit longer than it should be, especially in an independent transit corridor.
One of the problems is that a lot of the planning for this was done in a fairly secretive way. The public didn't have a lot of input to the actual design of stations, design of the track, design of the schedule, all of that sort of thing. That was basically done because it's a public-private partnership. They said, we're going to have a contract, a commercial organization. They will take on the risks, but they will make the decisions about how to build it.
The current transit master plan for Ottawa notes eventually converting the entirety of the line to double rail, but that has an expected implementation date of beyond 2046. So don't expect it to happen anytime soon.
A lot of people I know were disappointed when they heard that 2046 date. I didn't care because I know they're not going to make it to 2046. They're going to need to double track it, at least in most of the line, to bring the frequency down to 10, 8, 6 minutes at some point in the relatively near future. In very short order, the line is going to go from being fairly usable in terms of capacity to being completely slammed. And it's pretty hilarious if anyone at the city right now thinks it's going to take 20 years before we need to start double tracking things.
Despite that, my first trip on Line 2 was pleasant and, more importantly, successful. I got to Bayview, the terminal station, conveniently and was easily connected to Line 1 to get downtown. Getting back that night was much the same, but I was met with a rude awakening when arriving at Limebank. Despite being advertised on places like Google Maps, an OC Transpo employee on the platform alerted commuters that buses wouldn't be running to and from the station for the first week of operation, leaving me and the other passengers essentially stranded. And at this point, Limebank didn't really have anything around it. The plaza opposite was still under construction, and most housing and retail was down the road by about 3 kilometers. So unless you had someone who could pick you up, you'd be walking to your next destination. So there I was, waiting in -18 weather, no longer for a late bus, but a non-existent one. The week after, bus services were finally added and ran regularly, but it still feels like it could be better. Connections to and from the station are awkward and aren't really regular. I often face a conflict of interest after arriving, debating whether I wait for the next bus connection that's usually late or just walk. I found I was usually waiting between 8 to 20 minutes for any bus heading out of the station. Not awful timing per se, but hard to stomach after a minimum hour commute.
A big issue with the station locations is a lot of them aren't near anything. Like if you look at Limebank, if you look at Beauceville, they're kind of in the middle of nowhere. And ideally, when you're building a big LRT line, you have people that can walk to the station, that can easily bike to the station, so you get much more ridership. But you run into issues when people need to bus to the station and you don't fund enough frequency so that people can easily get to the stations. And it's disappointing for me. I know in the real world, you really should build transit before the housing is there. But the problem is the city of Ottawa already has so many places where there's lots of housing and they are not well served by transit.
I've been pretty fortunate to be able to carpool to the station or get dropped off by family, but the convenience in itself has also revealed how difficult it is to navigate the station as a driver. With no park and ride option and for the longest time lack of proper signage to where the drop-offs should be, it's made navigation very difficult. To add to that, the drop-off area was closed to construction July this year, and all drop-offs were diverted to a small road to the left of the station. This was implemented with zero prior notice, and has made pickups and drop-off chaos, especially during early morning or rush hour. There's even been an alleged report of a pedestrian nearly getting hit by a bus when crossing to the area with right-of-way, with the situation currently being investigated by police and OC Transpo. After talking to residents, it seems to be issues prevalent with them too.
You're dealing with a very huge impediment against getting people to adopt this kind of transit. If in a car-bound development, you're not making it easy for them to access.
Got to be the least user-friendly station I've seen.
I am legally blind, so if I want to get anywhere on my own, I have to use transit. The regular drop-off, it was really hard to figure out where the cars are supposed to go. It wasn't really indicated anywhere, because I know my husband was like, I don't even know where I'm supposed to go in to really drop you off.
Leitrim has a designated park and ride. There's a space designated for people to be dropped off or picked up from, like, say, you need to be picking up an Uber. That's easy. But for Limebank, I had to walk out of Limebank station.
It looks horrible at nighttime. It's so dark, and there's so many people picking up. How can they cross the street where it's so dark and you can't see, and like the buses and the cars probably can't see you?
There are risks associated, like pedestrians almost getting hit.
Well, at this point, I heard two different possible incidents that happened there. So definitely dangerous. There's too many cars coming in too many directions.
And I remember going, okay, all of a sudden there was you couldn't turn into that spot where now all, I guess, the buses that has subsequently been torn up. So I don't know why they built that in the first place, to tear it up 6 months later, but
maybe this drop-off situation wouldn't be such a big deal if there were functional buses for people to take.
Actually, my son and daughter go to Carleton. First, we thought she would walk there, and then she discovered that she's like, well, that's way too long. I thought, okay, you'll take the bus then. But then she was quickly discouraged because sometimes they wait half an hour or 45 minutes for the bus.
We're supposed to be using transit, but yet we need to rely on someone with a car. And why do they run all the buses down Earl Armstrong? Like, there's 5 or something buses down this one street, but there's only one bus down Spratt, where a lot of the people live.
Also, I know the bus connection times are are horrendous too, from when the time the train arrives to can you actually get then a bus to take you to the community.
I've seen the 70 and the 74, the two main buses going to Barhaven, leave literally as the train is coming in. Like, it's just like, what? No, you have to wait a minute more. And the next one is 30 minutes, right? And they're both 30 minutes. That's the problem.
I mean, and generally, like, your end of line should be a park and ride. It's the furthest point. That's where you should want people to park.
They say, oh, you can go to Bowesville. Well, I drove to Bowesville, and 5 minutes later I'm at Bowesville. My destination is I'm just going to keep on driving.
The Bowesville station is just like, oh, we're going to make them go park over there instead of over here.
Well, if something is tangible and people can get to it, they'll use it. You put too many obstacles or make it too awkward, and then frankly, the line bank station, dangerous.
In our little pocket, which I jokingly call the forgotten part of Riverside South, which is over by St. FX, we have no bus service in our area. So if we want to catch the bus, we kind of have to walk over around the LCBO. So logically, to take the train, the fastest way is to walk to the train station, and there's sidewalk to get to Earl Armstrong. And then once you cross Earl Armstrong, there's no sidewalk between that and the station. So people are walking on the street in the bike lanes. When the snow starts to fall, of where are people going to walk on the side of that road? We were joking, and I'm like, I just want, dude, where's my sidewalk?
In order to get people to do this, you need to at least have parking. You need to have access. You need to design a system that makes sense in a suburban environment.
The message I was hoping to share is I'm a community member, and I see such potential in these major infrastructure projects that can connect communities. And when you launch something, this is the opportunity. You're starting to form patterns. So people are going to start to choose to use transit or not. And we talk about, the cost of living and the crisis of housing and things like that, but we're not setting up communities to use public transit and then complain that nobody's using public transit.
After everything I've said, you might be expecting some scathing anecdote about how bad transit in Ottawa is. But I'll counter that thought with this. I could not be happier that the train exists. It has pretty big flaws, but what it brings to the table outweighs the negatives.
I don't have any quarrels with it. The line does its job, and it does it well enough for me. Remember, Line 1 had all those issues. I'd figured this would be the same thing, and it was delayed for, 4 years, which was not a good first impression, so I wasn't too excited until it actually got me to work 10 minutes early, so...
We took it a few times, and we really like it. It's very nice. It's very friendly. I love it. It doesn't seem to go fast, but it's decent.
It's been like a year. It's been robust. It has been proven to be relatively all right against our harsh winters, which is pretty cool. And I like that I can now just catch the train to Walkley Station if I just want to go up the Platte.
The train's just nice. It's just comfortable. It's pleasant. And like I say, as long as I don't need to take a bus, I'm a happy commuter.
But yeah, it's certainly more reliable than the buses, because the buses get stuck in traffic.
While the new Line 2 extension is not perfect, it's a notable improvement on the spotty bus service that once plagued the area. Reflecting on the original O Train's journey to getting built, it's clear to me how influential local activism and political decisions were in its creation. As federal, provincial, and more importantly, municipal elections occurred, the visions for the project kept shifting, but it eventually got built.
And we're officially open, ladies and gentlemen.
We wouldn't have LRT today if we didn't have the success of that O Train.
The city of Ottawa has just reached a population of 1 million people, and the timing of this new transit system couldn't have been better.
Given Ottawa's messy history with transit projects, it can be really easy to get cynical about the project. But hope is a necessary ingredient to improving things. If people don't believe it's possible to make things better, then no one will try. It's understandable when people get angry with transit decisions, but as the O train extension shows us, the situation is not hopeless, and getting involved really does influence outcomes. So keep caring about the city and its transit system. Participate in your local elections and keep advocating for improvements. I'm grateful that the previous generations had the vision and fought the fights necessary to turn a place once described as the middle of nowhere into somewhere.